Hey, I'm coming to you live from Torrington, Connecticut, and I'm going to do change out the rear wheel hub assembly on a 2010 Toyota Prius. I've got a 2010 and a 2011. This is the third generation Prius, and they're quite a bit different from the second generation as far as replacing the rear hub assembly. The first thing I did when I started this off was clean out the back of your trunk, because you're going to have to get to your battery. And on these American cars, the battery is in the back passenger side in the trunk. So take everything out of there and remove the black cable or the negative from the battery so you shut down the power to the car. That's important so that the calipers don't pop out when you're doing this brake work. Not brake work, but hub work. And another thing to note is if you didn't do that, if you were to open your car door during the time while the caliper is off the car, the caliper pistons would pop out. So just be aware of that. The fastest way to make sure that doesn't happen is simply unplug that black negative cable. All right, so now your car is cleaned out. You've got the battery disconnected. While the car is still on the ground, go ahead and hit the lug nuts real quickly to loosen them. And then jack the car up. You'll see I've got a floor jack in place here. And if you look up underneath the vehicle, you'll see a couple of notches where that floor jack's supposed to go. Once I raised that up, I put in two backup jack stands for safety. And once that was all done, I went ahead and removed the lugs and the tire. Removed the entire brake caliper assembly, and you can see it's just kind of hanging off of that spring in the back. There's just two bolts on the back of that caliper assembly. You don't want to remove the calipers. I'm going to show you. See this rubber part right here? There's a rubber gasket right here, and there's another one down below. Don't take out those two bolts. Take out the other two that are there. It'll take a 14mm socket, and that will remove this whole assembly. Once you've got that off, pry off the rear disc rotor. Mine came off pretty easily, wasn't a problem. But the reason why I'm filming this is because I had a hard time getting off the hub assembly itself. I'll show you what that looked like. This is the old hub assembly. It was seized onto this plate. It was rusted up, and that's pretty normal for these sorts of things. But I had to whack this thing from the back. So when it's sitting there like that, I took a metal piece of iron, which I've got right here, and I was hitting it from behind. So I had that caliper up in the air, and I was hitting the back of it like this. So I was laying under the car to drive that out. And it took about 50 whacks with a 3-pound sledge and a good piece of iron before that finally pried itself free. And also I used a little bit of WD-40 or anti-seize if you've got it. I was popping that right down the top back to penetrate that. Make sure you don't get any of that WD-40 or penetrating oil on your disc brakes, of course. On your new brake pads if you're changing the pads out too. So anyway, that was removing the hub assembly, and I hope that's helpful. Here's a quick shot of the tools that you're going to need if you want to replace your rear wheel bearings or rear hub assembly, and change out your rotors, and while you're in there, change out your brake pads. So this is everything you need. I've got a 2.5-ton floor jack. This is the Toyota lug wrench, brake pads, and brake clips, hold it in place. A couple of V-hooks that you'll replace also. I've got the thread locker blue. That's medium strength. Don't use the red because you'll have to weld it off if you ever want to get at it again. You also need this disc brake piston tool if you're going to replace the pads. You need this tool. And when you use it, it's basically, it's like a dice. And roll the dice, see what you come up with now. You want to use this side with the 4 stubs that stick out. And you stick this on the end of a 3/8 inch drive wrench. And that's how you turn the calipers in. I've got some PB Blaster here, penetrating oil, that will help you pry off your old rear wheel hub assembly, because it's going to be seized on there with rust. I also used this pry bar to help it off. That helped out quite a bit. This is about a 3-pound sledge, metal sledge. And here's a bar that I used. I hit the sledge with this cast iron bar to drive the hub assembly off of the car. This is a piece of plumbing pipe. You'll see it's clear through. And I put this on the end of my socket wrench so I have more leverage to break the bonds of the Loctite on existing nuts. There's some brake lubricant, and this is so your calipers or your brake pads don't squeal. Just take a little dab and you put it on the very end of each end there, so you won't hear any noise when it's sitting in its clips. This is a torque wrench. If you don't know what a torque wrench is, you want to tighten this up, tighten up some of the parts based on torque specifications. And on the top, you'll notice it says Newton meters, and on the bottom is foot-pounds. So whichever one you want to use, I have specs on both. Here's a rubber mallet. I used that also. Look at this nice bad boy. New brake rotor. I've got 2 of them there. And this is the rear wheel hub assembly. The bearings inside were shot, and so I was getting a lot of rear end noise from the car. I also have some steel wool just to clean up any parts that are rusted while I'm in there, like the brake dustpan cover. And then I've got two jack stands here just to use as backup so the car doesn't fall and crush my big fat. First thing you want to do is break the lug nuts. I had to step on these. I had to refilm it, so they're all loose. You want to do this while the car's on the ground. That's my German Shepherd Uma.